What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the MN Viking Zombie YouTube channel. And we're doing your Facebook, right, Adam?
No, I couldn't because I don't have enough or I don't have enough people following me on there yet.
What's the
So
other
we're on
platform?
Twitch and
Yeah.
YouTube right now.
Nice, okay. Obviously, you guys can tell this is a first time. We're using a different method to get this stuff out to you, but we're excited today. My name is Kyle. This is my friend Adam. This is his channel. We do lots of
Howdy.
fun stuff together. We're back at it today with a. Do we call this movie a horror? I don't call it a horror. I put this under thriller, but either way,
I mean,
um,
there's some pretty wild stuff in it.
oh, it's definitely interesting. I have lots of opinions. This was a good choice. I don't know if it's your traditional horror. If you're looking for a Friday the 13th, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street esque film, I don't think this resembles that much at all. But it is a lot of fun. I'm learning through doing this channel with you, Adam. I have to let my guard down a little bit. And I'm not saying it in a bad way. I think I expect too much out of some movies sometimes, and it's fun to really just let your hair down and let the movie do what it does. And that's exactly what this movie did. We are reviewing a nasty piece of work. Now it says here it was released in 2019, but it's fresh to Hulu, which is where I watched it today. And it's a part of the Into the Dark series, I believe.
Right? It's season 2, episode 3 of Into the Dark, which was recently released on Hulu. It was released as a movie earlier, but it was released as an episode of this series Into the Dark, which is a lot of little, like, movies like this. Little standalone things that I might have to go and catch up more on because I thought this was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I like the idea that this could be a part of a series. I think that was an underrated part of like yours and my youth. I loved Goosebumps. I love the fact that you could have these bigger mini stories inside a collection of things. Now I'm not sure because this is my first introduction to Into the Dark, but if this is the way everything is going to go with this series, I'll be interested to look at some more and see which ones have really good ratings. But Adam suggested this, and I mean, let's just jump right into it. The plot of the movie. There will be spoilers if it's your first time watching, but the plot here, as I read on IMDb, is the boss of a private equity company invites two couples to his home for a Christmas party, and it's just bizarre. And I'll say to start, I think everyone that got cast for this, I think they played their role very well.
When I started watching this movie, I got a weird feeling like it was almost like a Hallmark feel,
Absolutely, great description.
which I don't mean as an insult. Hallmark movies aren't necessarily bad, but for what I was expecting out of a horror movie, it wasn't quite what I expected. And then it spent a lot of time developing those characters early, and I got a little bit anxious to see what was going to happen. But the time they spent developing those characters was well paid off if you watched the entire show.
Yeah, I think I don't know that I love the writing so much. There are some zingers that are pretty predictable. This is the first time where, and to give you guys a backstory of what it is, Adam has a plethora of horror movie knowledge, and he's invited me along because I'm a fan, but I'm very much a rookie in this. I'm a novice in diving into all sorts of things. That's why I like this channel because I've watched a lot of things normally I never would even hear of, first off. But I said to you earlier in this channel, I was like, I would like to be a little smarter as I watch movies to see things coming because as it sits now, I felt like kind of just a dumb fan. This movie right here, this is the first time I've ever been like, I know what's going to happen and I've seen this before. And I kind of wish that I could go back to that point of not really knowing because I was right most of this movie, I was like, man, I wish that I didn't know that. But I think it's to your point that it does have a Hallmark feel as to there's a formula to this movie.
And it's sculpted to have those twists in place.
Yep.
And I say twists because they are very heavy handed twists. They aren't like subtle nod here and there. It's full direction change twists throughout the whole thing.
I've been eating like crazy today, and I think I could compare this to food. As what Adam was saying just now is, if you want to go for like a 6 course meal, you usually get a small sampling of everything. It's very light, but it's very delicious. Today, we're just going to the gas station when we talk about these topics, and we're getting all the fatty, terrible things that are not good for you, and they're going to fill you up really quick. That's the subject matter and kind of the choices in this movie when it comes to these characters. Now, there's two characters I would call them the main ones. Ted and Gavin, played respectively by Kyle Howard, which I've seen him before in some things. Dustin Milligan, he played an excellent kind of a cocky douchebag role in this movie,
Oh yeah.
and they both filled their parts very well. Ted is a little insecure. He's the shorter of the two. He's slightly less handsome than the big bro, douchey macho guy. And they're rivals at work, and they want this promotion that they think is in the wings by their boss, who we find out later. He's played by Julian Sands, great, evil, maniacal boss. He gave me like Smithers vibes,
Right.
a little bit. But yeah, we find out that they are battling against each other, and they think there's a promotion involved. What they don't understand is getting invited to this Christmas party, which we talked about at the beginning, is they're going to be put through a series of weird situations, and they're going to be manipulated emotionally. And the level that you would think it would go to, because it has a Hallmark feel, would be, you know, in that 3, 4, 5 range on a 1 to 10 scale. Everything here is like starts at a 7 and just keeps going.
Right.
And that's I can't think that's kind of the thing that I ended up loving about this movie. I just watched it maybe 2 hours ago. I started it, so it's fresh on my mind. But yeah, I think that's the thing that I like the most about it is for how cheesy or predictable or corny this could be. Man, they sure did amp it up. It's like I hate to bring up drinking because I know you're sober. I'm pretty much sober too. But man, you know, when you're 19 and you want an underage drink and you just want to hang with your friends, you buy the cheapest, strongest stuff you can find.
Oh, yeah.
That's what this movie reminds me of. I'm not coming here to get a 40-year-old bourbon or brandy like that's been aged that tastes well and you sip. I'm here to drink a Four Loko and black out, and that's kind of what this movie represents.
Like you were saying, the movie does kind of want you to pit these two gentlemen against each other for
Yeah.
the promotion, but to me, the real charm in this movie came in the relationship between the boss and his wife. That dynamic right there was so entertaining through the whole thing.
It was entertaining. That was the only part that I didn't like in the beginning was there was this just typical bar talk between the wife and the husband. Shout out to Molly Hagan. She plays Kiwi in the movie. She's obnoxiously adorable.
She is.
What a horrible wife, but I just wanted to listen to everything she had to say because she kind of ran the show with her husband Steven, played by Julian Sands. There's a great dynamic here. There's 3 couples. The rich couple he's the executive of the company. You can tell the guy that I talked about earlier, Ted. He's kind of a brown noser. He'll do anything. You know, he starts the movie off by bringing in his golf clubs and rushing him to his boss, and his boss belittles him, saying, "I can't use these clubs. You'll mess them up." You know, in front of the cocky douchebag that we talked about earlier, and then it just kind of sets the tone there. There's an alpha male douchey type. There's a nerdy brown nose, and then you got the boss that you find out from the beginning. He's kind of a turd. Kind of lifts his nose at these guys, and then from there, the whole plot of the movie is we're just going to pit these guys against each other. And I think to your point is, man, you see the difference automatically, and it kind of makes you pick a side. But you find out as the movie goes along, these guys are way more similar than even they kind of realize because they're kind of flawed in very similar but different ways. And yeah, we can get into that. I want to talk about some of these scenarios they came up with because
All right.
it's kind of genius. Yeah, go ahead. I'll let you pick up. I'm describing the movie, but I don't want to do it in detail for like 20 straight minutes because I know that'll be boring for everybody.
Well, a lot of the characterization in this movie was interesting. I was trying to figure out at first why they were including the wives at first because it didn't make a lot of sense to me. But I guess dinner party, you invite, everybody. And at first that seemed odd to me because the wives are such polar opposites as well.
Yeah.
I think that is something that this movie did well, is that they did cast people or write characters that are so different from each other that they played out on the screen differently and felt really unique to the show.
So to piggyback on your point, even the way these actresses look, they kind of fit the character that they're married to, the character that they're playing. They're both 2 very beautiful women in different retrospects. Natalie Hall plays Missy. She's married to Gavin, the bro type. She's your typical bombshell American blonde. Very pretty, a little Hollywood, a little Barbie to her. I was taken back by Angela Sarifian. She plays Tatum. She is gorgeous, and she's tall, slender. She has a unique face. She's a brunette. She's married to Ted, who's supposedly the more honest guy in the bunch, and they both just they fit so well. Like the casting, I'll go back
Yeah.
to is so well to fit these characters because if we're going to be honest, and this isn't a slight to any of these actors or actresses, these aren't like you might have seen one or two of these people and you can't remember where they're from. These aren't A-list celebrities. This isn't the Robert Downey Jr.'s of the world and the Julia Roberts, right? So I could see if this was directed by a higher name and written by a little better actress, and this is formed into something else. This could be really good because if it's cast like this is cast, you could have one of those star-studded like murder mystery whodunits, and you could definitely have that sort of vibe to this because this requires all of these people and to have to each have their moments, and that's kind of what I'm leading into to talk about some of these scenes because they arrive to the house and even the cars that they drive represent the couple and the people. You know,
Right.
the bro is driving a douchey sports car. He's got his trophy model wife, and you know these two live within their means. They're kind of modest.
Girl notices on the wall, and she's,
Yeah.
and it's kind of symbolic of the mask that he would have worn with the other CEOs that was broken.
Yeah, you know, it was a little foreshadowing, and I did think about that at the beginning where the wife throws and breaks the mask. But also when you go out towards the end after some characters are not alive anymore at the end, you look at all the masks are there, and I'm like, I was trying to picture which one it was and who was wearing it now, and if that was going to be a symbol of something, which it ended up not being. But I thought about that. I'm thinking, which one of you would wear the mask, and how do I interpret what each one represents? Because I can clearly see the bro character here and kind of what he represents. The thing that was interesting to me was, and I was thinking kind of like the wife Kiwi, what's going to make Ted tick, and how far is he going to go? Because you see several times, and we didn't talk about it in the beginning, where he kind of snaps. He takes his boss's golf clubs and smashes the mirror in the back of the door. He has a little bit of a rage problem because fairly enough, he's been mistreated. He's not been valued in his job, and he's kind of fed up with it. So that was kind of my whole interest in the movie was, all right, I've invested in Ted. I've invested in kind of the guy they're focusing on. I also like his wife a lot because she's kind of his voice of reason. It's interesting you bring up the mask. I wonder who would be what. And I can't go through all the masks and describe them to you, but if you see the movie,
Right.
try it. If you guys end up watching this, whoever sees it, and you give this film a choice or a chance, go and see which one they would choose. Like I'm thinking about them in my head now, and I think I have the one that I picked out for Ted at least.
Yeah, the more I kind of got into this movie, I don't really know how to talk about like the characters as they evolved because I don't know how much like there was evolution of the characters. The main character, his devotion to his boss and his ability to back up and be like, hey, you know, I'm mad, and get his stuff under control. Like when he was looking at his boss looking over the that ledge, and you could tell he was thinking about pushing him or hurting him or something.
Yeah, and that's a part of the thing that takes the dark side of this. Like Ted does have a darkness in him. I wonder how that would bleed over, but ultimately he makes he makes the right decision most of the time. I think he represents the everyman, which would appeal to a larger mass of people. There's a lot of Teds out there, like they're fed up with their job. They just want to get a promotion. They're trying really hard, and he's trying hard, but he just can't seem to get what he wants because he feels like he's always, 2 steps behind. But back to the part of the movie we're in, there's a lot of bickering going on, and then the challenges come out. There's banter back and forth between the wife. Of course, this is a typical movie where the wife and the husband hate each other, and the wife's usually sauced. Kiwi's like telling everyone, make me a drink. So she's hitting on the douchey guy right in front of his wife, and the wife's like, fine, it's cool, you can do whatever, we want the promotion. It's kind of gross and disgusting.
Yeah.
Then she moves her way to Ted and tells his wife, hey, can you make me a drink? This is how you make it. Which I thought was like the subtle jabs of like belittling. It's like, hey, you're in my house, but you make me a drink. There's no way I could stay for that. I was like, really? You have these people that are cleaning your place. They don't make the drinks here? Okay.
Yeah, I thought that too when the wife was like handing him stuff and being like, "Hey, take care of this houseboy," and the husband was doing it instead of one of the employees. It was like, interesting.
Yeah, there's so much passive aggressiveness in this movie. There's actual aggression too, but it's funny to see that. Kiwi makes her way around to Ted. She's trying to make him break. She's like touching him in inappropriate spots and like in front of people, and it gets you really uncomfortable. But I think that's another thing with this movie that is, for the stuff that you can predict, part of that uncomfortable feeling that you have watching it is I can't take my eyes off of it. That's when I was most interested because I was like, I wonder where the line is going to be now. Like when you go to the arcade and you have that machine with the coins, you're like, what's it going to take to make this tip over?
Right.
And it gets you right there, and then it stops. You're like, all right, it's not here yet. It's a little early in the movie, but I'm waiting to see what it is. And what ends up happening is a husband and wife boil over, and they get into an argument. He's talking about stuff that old men talk about that only old men are interested in. She calls him a boring host. They argue. There's an antique gun on the wall. The next thing you know, he's in a fit of rage, pointing a gun at his wife. And in the movie, he shoots her. And you think, okay, there it is. There's the big reveal number one. And what I thought was interesting is you can see as a rational person, and that's my flaw for watching these things, is thinking like a rational human being, and not just letting myself be entertained as, oh my God, you got to get out of the house immediately and call the cops. And he's using this weird mental manipulation to try to say like, hey, if you want the promotion, tell me how I can get out of this. Let's see who's smarter. And it's like, dude, I'm not doing this for you. Like, you just shot your wife. I'm out of here. But they, of course, in the movie, they go along with it. They're like, how can I prove myself? It's this weird Stockholm Syndrome thing where they're like, I got to prove myself to this guy over and over and over again.
Yeah, the guy who played, was it Kyle?
Yeah, Kyle Howard. He's plays Ted.
Okay, who's the guy that played the cocky guy?
Dustin Milligan plays Gavin in the movie.
Because the way he was playing that character, I didn't know if there was going to be a limit that he would reach to where he'd be like, no, I ain't, no, I'm out.
Right. I'm with you. I think, and that I think it's a good representation of society as a whole, especially in America, is there's a lot of people like Ted that go through their day, their heads down, they'll get talked to and belittled, but they're like, I just want to keep my job and hopefully get a promotion. If I work hard, my boss will finally have to give in for my hard work. And for every guy like that, there's definitely the opposite of this guy, Gavin, the character of, what do you want me to do? Okay, cool. We're burying the body. Do you have a shovel? Do you have a spot picked out? And he's like, yeah, I'll do it. And he flies off the hinges pretty quick. And what I find weird too is we start to talk about the manipulation and the key points of like certain things that, because this is like the culmination. The scene I just described to you all was a prank. Didn't really shoot his wife that time. They just wanted to test these guys. So you see how crazy they are and how maniacal, manipulative they are. But when they start getting into it now, you see the seed is planted. This is where I started predicting stuff. I'm like, oh no, they're getting dirt on each other. They're going to expose each other to their wives. And that's when it got like really awkward and deep for me was you don't talk badly about your spouse. You don't do it at a party where they're close by, and you don't do it to your boss. If you gotta lie, that's the time to lie. I know the character Gavin is capable of lying. So just lie, dude. But he's, a typical unintelligent bro, and he says these things about his trophy wife. He calls her stupid. Unbeknownst to him, it's being recorded by his boss on his phone. Later on, we can talk about what Ted does later because it gets revealed in the movie. But I thought that was really interesting. I'm like, oh God, this is a silver spoon to come back and bite you in the rear end later, and it does. It's really weird to see people in this movie like Gavin and Missy married to each other, and they're kind of made for each other, but they kind of hate each other too. I'm like, why are you married? You don't have to be married to each other. It's really weird.
It was too, and it was weird how Missy kept egging it on, being like, go get that promotion, go, do your thing.
Yeah.
And on the opposite side, you had, the other wife saying, let's get out of here, and he kind of wanted to stay and see what else was there for him to have to do to get this promotion. And eventually, he starts thinking, well, they're just playing games with us, so none of this is real. That
was the biggest thing about being being a fan of Ted and wanting to see him succeed, he says this, I mean, probably a dozen times in the movie. They're just messing with us. This is, hey, we should go. So go. Why didn't you go? I'm a
Right.
rational fan here. I'm like, get out of that house. But he wants this promotion 50. If it's a 100% scale, he's always at the 51% mark of, okay, he has the majority. He wants the promotion. He's going to stay. He's on the edge. He could be swayed. He's almost swayed, but he's like, I'm going to stay at this 51% because maybe it'll happen. He wants it that bad. And I think that's the part of the movie where it's like, he's just tainted enough where, and I'm going to use a really weird, obscure, gross reference, but it's almost like going out in the cold. Like, he's not going to get his foot amputated from frostbite, but he's going to lose a toe because of his greediness. And in this movie, he does expose the secret. I just exposed the secret for Gavin talking about his wife. Steven plays it in front of the whole group, which is super embarrassing. Obviously, Missy's upset. She storms away, and you're thinking, God, you're an idiot. Why would you say that in the first place? Well, we're not going to describe the whole movie, but Steven makes an advance to the young trophy wife, which was really gross and weird, and brings it back around. And then they start prying at Ted in this movie. They were like, hey, so you've been staying late, huh? You don't have a side piece? Like, what's that about? And there's a big secret that you get a little bit later in the movie with Ted that you're like, oh my God, he really is dark. This is crazy. And he tries to do what he believes is right to make it right later. You know, I'll tell you guys in a little bit. I don't want to spoil it all now, but man.
But they kind of like held your hand and walked you up to those reveals, because
yeah.
that scene where the wife was threatening of diving in the pool with the statue roped to her,
Yeah.
and the other wife was like going in that room to get her a towel.
Yeah, another subconscious like mind game of like, we're better than you. Go serve me. I hated that.
But it wasn't even that. What it was when she came back, and she said, "Oh, someone touched me when I reached in for the towel," and Ted was like, "Are you sure you didn't feel like have your arm brushed up against a towel or something?" And he questioned her.
Yeah, I won't say gaslighting, but a little bit of gaslighting-ish there, and it's like, okay, are you sure about that? Which is funny coming from him, because in the movie we talked about, they're at a very rich executive's house. When they pull up, it's the young, supposedly good couple. They do see a guy on the second floor wearing a mask, close the curtains really quick, so someone's there. Someone's in the house.
Right.
There's all these little, not even nuggets. These are pretty obvious, but the main boss here in this movie, Steven, says, what, do you think you have people in the walls? How dare you make that assumption? And it's like, yeah, he does have people in the wall. He literally just told you what was going on.
Right.
And for the sixth time, halfway through the movie, Ted, yes, you should probably leave. They were on their way out. They were outside of the house, and they ended up going back in, of course. Yeah, it's a good point, man. They manipulate mentally in this one so much, and that's the thing. The only kind of irritant in this movie overall. I can get over the writing. I can get over X, Y, and Z. But man, these guys are suckers in this movie. Like, they just keep getting brought back in. I'm like, you guys are full grown adults. You got to be better than this. If this happened to college kids, I could believe it. But people in their 30s or 40s, like, you got to be smarter than that.
And I don't care how much of a douche or a piece of crap you are. You get shot in the hand, you're probably gonna want to go to the hospital.
But it fits his character so well, doesn't it? He gets shot in the hand. He takes some pills. He doesn't know what they are by the host, and then he's like, "I'm good. I still went through a promotion." Like, you are definitely the one that's going to die by whatever stupid moral or hill that you have. It's so fun,
Right?
So good point. There's a lot of mind games. We're not going to give away every scene. It would take too long. But in short, Kiwi shoots Mr. Bro Gavin in the hand. Or no, was it Ted? I forget who shot Gavin in the hand. Somebody used one of the rifles we were talking about earlier in his hand. So he's bleeding. They wrap it up. He's a little woozy from some meds. A hilarious scene where they're prying Ted for information, and the douchebag is in like a massage chair, just hanging out. There are little bits of comedy in this movie and like little zingers if you catch them. But what I found interesting is, I told you guys earlier, I invested in Ted, who was supposed to have the better moral compass of the two main guys. You find out in the movie that they've been prying him. He's been staying late at the office. And you think, Ted's surely not having an affair. And he's not. Right. What ended up happening, if I remember correctly, he hit someone. He thought he hit someone with his car.
Yeah.
He was going to visit him because he thought he, like, handicapped a man, and he didn't tell anybody. So, yeah, that was a big reveal, and that was like, oh, you do. The more I see it, there are layers to this Ted character that, man, he's got a darkness in him
But
somewhere.
you're bringing up the one part of the movie that I just really couldn't stand was that part right there because if you think about it, how long did that boss or that corporation pay that guy to pretend like he was, immovable or, can't move anything, maybe paralyzed or quadriplegic or whatever at that point?
I think he said it at the end of the movie. That was played by Nico Greetham, or Greetham, however you said it. Plays the character Daniel. And he's like, I've been acting like this for 3 years. And they were like, yeah, we paid you handsomely for that. 3 years? That's when you know you have that Beyonce, Jay-Z money where you're like, at this point, I can just hire people to be a character in my house, which is hilarious. It's not. Like, the actual thing of what you're talking about in real life would be awful. But in this movie, that was the most outlandish thing. I'm like, so they just hired a guy and paid him 3 years to sit in a
And they
wheelchair?
planned out this whole thing like 3, 4, 5 years in advance.
Yeah, that one was the most outlandish part of the movie. You're absolutely right, Adam.
Well, that and what did that one guy say? He had remote control bullets?
Yeah, I can control them because it's an antique rifle and it's got a different magazine. It's like, no, you can't. That's not how it works. You're not David Copperfield, man. That's not how that shit works. Oh, that's funny. So we get to the big reveal, and throughout the movie, the manipulative couple, the power couple that own the home, they've been playing all these mind games, right? And they've had this underlying story about this child that they lost. They lost their son, and they blame each other, and they bring up bad things, which is that would have been the final straw for me. Like, I am not here to hear about what your therapy hasn't fixed, dude. I'm out. And yeah, of course, they bring out Nico Greedham, Daniel character. There's a grown man in a wheelchair, and he can move around. I think he has use of a couple of his fingers. His head's turned a little bit. His hand is contorted, doesn't work. And you're like, oh my god, like they didn't kill him. They made him into a vegetable. This is terrible. And you feel that immediately when he comes out. You're like, oh man, I didn't see this twist coming. Comes to find out that this is just a character that they've revealed, and Ted has to own up to it. He's like, oh my god, that's not your son. This is the guy that I hit with my car. And then you have the big reveal of, oh my god, Ted's kind of a piece of crap too. And that's when I wasn't broken for the movie, but I was really like, oh, well, anything can happen now, because the one Bond in the movie that I trusted was him and his wife, Tatum. And you could just see like the disgust, and she's like, what? Who are you? Like, what is this? And I thought that was really clever for the movie, but I didn't like it. Made me feel scummy. That's a great plan, but why would you do that to these people and get them to wreck their marriages and all that? It's really sadistic.
But I guess if you're going to hire someone into a position of power in a large corporation, you would need to know how they'd handle so many situations. And if you're willing to go to this extreme to test someone, that shows how much you care about your corporation, I guess.
It is, and it's funny you say that, because that is what ends up happening for the ending, which surprisingly I didn't see coming. But yeah, it's hilarious. They find out all this dirt on each other. At this point, both of the couples, all four of them, have dirt on another person, and an anger and an animosity there, which is rightfully so. But you're wondering at this point, you're about 3/4 of the way in the movie, like, what is going to happen here? There's a big argument at this point. There's a big reveal that the young man in the wheelchair, he's not handicapped. He's been playing a role. And everybody's like, are you kidding me? And now the tensions go higher. The guns come back out, and then it's the final showdown of, all right, Ted, Gavin, which one of you is going to own up and take over this company? Like, you just got to do the one thing that, you can't reverse, but there's a reason why each one of you could and couldn't do it. Let's find out. And of course, this is the only time that I felt vindicated in predicting something. I'm like, well, if you have any brains at all, you don't shoot each other. You kill the couple, man. They're terrible humans. But it came out of left field because Ted didn't do it. Gavin didn't do it. They had rifles pointed at each other. It's sweet Tatum. Tatum takes everything into her own hands, shoots the husband, and shoots the wife. And I was kind of shocked, but I was also like, finally, there's a piece of the movie that I kind of agree with. Thank you.
And before that, there was a moment, I'd say a minute or so of the movie that was so awkward that it was hard to watch. And that's when Missy was on that guy's lap in the wheelchair and they were wheeling around.
Yeah, if you're playing a mentally challenged or physically handicapped person, because there seemed to be a little mixture of both with this character. I'm trying to tiptoe the line and be PC here, but basically, you have a person who is able-bodied or whatever. The wife says, "Well, why don't you sit on his lap? Just pretend he's Santa Claus and ride him around the room." You're right, Adam. That was very uncomfortable. I kind of brained up that part because I kind of hit the 10
Yeah,
second
watching
forward
that, I was
button.
like, this is not great.
No, yeah, it wasn't the best part of the movie. I did hit the 10-second forward button a couple times to get through that pretty fast. But yeah,
But
you
there
can,
were quite a few moments actually in a nasty piece of work that made you uncomfortable in not a terrible, terrible way, but it
yeah.
made you uncomfortable enough to where you wanted to see what was going to happen next to change that situation and see what the next uncomfortable was going to be.
I don't know if it was just me personally that kept saying would I or would I not, which is 99% of this would not. I'm not going to jail and risking jail time and losing my job for anybody. But there's a lot of times where you're like, if I'm in this fantasy land, yeah, I'm thinking about what they might say, what they might do. And you find yourself in this, like, okay, well, I'm not doing it. Are they going to? And it made you invest. I think that's the thing that you're describing that I'm trying to vocalize now is it did a good job of reeling me in, kind of like a WWE performance if you've been seeing the WWE live. You know what's going to happen, but
Right.
you've got to watch it unfold, and that's the part where you're like, I can't look away. And they did a really good job in this movie all the way to the end. The big reveal after when both the rich couples have gone, they've been killed. The couples walk outside and they're kind of just licking their wounds at this point, being like, all right, I don't know what the heck we're going to do. We should get out of here. We should have left a long time ago. And there it is, all eyes wide shut, just a group of guys in white masks and white suits. And you think, you guys are going to die now. And they say, what have you done? Do you even realize what you've done? And then they do like the kind of Scooby-Doo reveal. And they're like, you just saved us $40 million by getting rid of this crazy guy who runs a company and his
It's
terrible
hilarious
wife.
too because the guys that were standing there in those masks, they looked intimidating.
They were very creepy.
And then they take the masks off and they're like the old frail CEO guys and you're like, "Oh,
Right.
why was I intimidated?"
It's strictly the mask, right? And the way they talk was a little embellished, but it was funny. They were creepy with the mask on, and you're like, oh, these are just the guys who are just the company's an ATM to them now. They're just like the most powerful
Right.
guys you're never going to have a conversation with. And it's really funny. They say, hey, one guy says, well, I wish I would have just thought of that. I'll just kill him. Like it's hilarious. They get rid of the boss. They get rid of the wife. They say, well, you saved us $40 million a year because he's gone. And then, of course, Ted says, well, that means that position's open, right? And they're like, yeah, I think we've seen who should run the company now after everything. They said, you saw everything. They're like, the crew of CEOs say, yeah, we saw everything. I think we know who should run the company. And then you break to Ted walking into the office, which you saw at the beginning of the movie. Him and Gavin sit down, and you're like, wait a minute. Are we neither one of them? And they kind of go back and forth and say, hey, how's the hand? He flips him the bird. And then the cool boss reveal, which I thought was very, and I say this in a good way, not in a bad way. It's very 2024, but the woman comes out on top, which was cool. She's in her nice like power suit. It's Tatum, Ted's wife in the movie. She ends up taking over, and they're like, well, she did take them out. She is kind of a ruler. Ted did say in the movie, I consult my wife about everything. So she ends up taking over the company. She walks the walk. She looks the part at the end, and I thought that was a fitting ending. And I can't believe I didn't see that coming. I can't believe I didn't see it.
As soon as they said that they knew who they knew was going to take over, I knew it was going to be her. But maybe it was because I kind of wanted it to be.
Yeah. It made total sense after the reveal happened. I said, you know what? Of all the things I predicted in this movie, that was the most obvious one. And I was just waiting to see. But
Is it kind of weird that they resolved every character except Missy?
yeah, we don't know what happened with her. I know
I
that.
kind of hope she broke up with him.
I kind of think they probably should have. I'm not your therapist, but if we're doing this dream scenario in a fake world, my guess is they decided to call it off. Because that was the crazy part is they said such terrible things about each other, and like they weren't going to be faithful. So it just comes down to like, what's your line that you don't want to cross? Yeah, we both agree we'll probably cross that at some point because we don't like each other that much. Let's just go ahead and end it now. So I'm with you. I hope that they just kind of cut their losses and went their separate ways.
Yeah, that one moment when they were talking to Gavin and they were like, "Would you kill Ted to get this job? Would you kill Missy to get this job?"
Yep.
And the fact he didn't answer right away was pretty telling.
Yeah, it's funny. He's like, "Would you kill me and my wife tonight?" He's like, "For $1 million, yes." He goes, "Would you kill your wife?" He's like, "For $1 million up front or $1 million a year salary?" I laughed really hard when he said that. I was like, "Dude, with your wife in the room, that's cold."
That is
He's
cool.
like, "What? I'm just trying to get the question, you know." Like he's trying to justify it. He's such a turd. But overall, like we kind of walked you through the movie. Left out some parts that you can see for yourself, but I like this movie. You nailed it earlier, saying it had a Hallmark feel in the way that it was set up and kind of even the way it looked. The acting was like you could tell very short scenes instead of long, drawn out, build the tension scenes. These were definitely like 2 or 3 minute scenes where we get meat and potatoes, we get a zinger here, we get a big climax of an action here, and it's just a lot of that strung together. Um, but overall, I'm glad you suggested this, man. I didn't hate this movie at all. There is a part where you might get annoyed with it. Um, for me, it was a little predictable and a little bit like corny. But
Yeah.
I give the actors and actresses credit, man. I've seen them a few times in some other things, but overall, if you just let this movie do what it does, like I said, like a WWE match, like obviously I would have loved that more when I was younger. But if I go now and take my son, I know what it is. I can be entertained by this. I was entertained by this movie. So overall, yeah, I like this. I like this one. I don't think it's anything to write home about, but this isn't going to be the worst rated movie we've done on this channel. I don't know that we'll ever go back that low again.
This wasn't the dark, plotting horror movies that we're used to seeing.
Right.
This was like a well lit stage play playing out in front of you instead of like a slasher or gross movie that you're watching just for like gore or kills or whatever. Because the body count in this movie is what, 2?
Yeah, it's not very many. That's my dog saying hello in the back, drinking water really loud. Thank you. Yeah, it's not very many. Like I said, this is more of not even a whodunit. It has a whodunit kind of feel, but it's like more of the thriller drama kind of category. So that's where it is for most of it.
I actually saw this as a recommendation on my TikTok feed, so
Nice.
big props to TikTok. I've seen quite a few movies on there that we have reviewed on this channel, so I mean, we're always open to checking out new things. Just let us know if there's something you want us to check out. I mean, A Nasty Piece of Work isn't one of the big Hollywood blockbusters that is blowing people's doors down or making millions at the box office, but it's a solid, interesting movie that we can sit down and talk about, and that's sometimes good enough.
There's more of that on this channel than you probably would think, but it's a good thing. I come into it with the mind frame of kind of like with music. It just made me think, we could have done Halloween or whatever before, and it's kind of like when you sit down to watch like Adele or listen to Bruno Mars. Like I know the production's going to be A1 with these top tier artists. I know that there's going to be savvy characters in Halloween that I'm familiar with, and they're going to take me to an elevated place because they're so popular. But you suggesting this to me is like a band I've never heard of before. And maybe their singer doesn't have my favorite voice, but they have interesting lyrics. Or maybe they play out of our regular 4/4 time. Maybe they play odd time signatures. Or maybe they just have a little more distortion and they have a punk rock feel. Whatever it is that you like, that's what this movie reminds me of. Yeah, I'm not going to put them in like all time change my life. But for this night, this movie did what I wanted it to do. And I appreciated that. And I guess just to lead into it, if I'm going to put a number on it, I'll give it like a 6.4. It's not terrible. It's not great. But it's one of those where I think if you gave it a shot and you're like, it's fine, I think you would come out more impressed rather than underwhelmed with this movie because it blends together at the right moments, a little bit of entertainment, definitely some comedy, and some darkness to it that you wouldn't normally think because it does start off, like you said, like a Hallmark.
Yeah, if the screenplay I think wasn't as weak, it might have been a little bit better.
Sure.
But and that's not a huge knock on the screenplay because the screenplay did what it needed to do.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't the deepest or most interesting. I know that they were setting up twists, and a lot of those twists that were coming weren't quite as surprising as I think they hoped they would be.
Sure.
So for that reason, I'm like you. I'm gonna go with a 6.8 maybe.
Yeah.
But like we were talking about the variety of stuff that we want to talk about, I am gonna push still for Smith to talk about Smile 2 with me.
We'll do Smile 2, and we also had it scheduled on our other platform, and we didn't get to because we had terrible connections that night. We can still review Deer Camp as well, because I did enjoy that movie. So let's add those to the list, and at least for the minimum, for the remainder of 2024, we still have quite a few days in the month of December. But Smile 2, we can definitely do. I've heard good things from you and other people, and we never got to do Deer Camp, so let's do Deer Camp next.
And trying this out for the first time on Evmux, I think that's how you pronounce it,
Yeah.
hasn't been too bad for us here.
Yeah, normally we do a football podcast about the Vikings, and we use StreamYard before, and I'm not trying to plot these two services against each other. That's the beauty of doing content. You can kind of do it however you want and get it to where you need to go, but I like the background that moves. It's very colorful. I hate the ad and the logo that moves while we're talking. That's a little distracting, but overall, I mean, you were playing some sound effects earlier and like an intro.
Oh
like,
yeah.
It's pretty good. I like it. Incredible.
This seems kind of fun, so maybe this will be something that we can use a little bit more going forward.
Sure, I like it, man. Good
But
selection,
I
man.
want to thank anyone who listened to this. Suggestions for us, let us know. In the meantime, stay bloody.